Hello, Booktube. Welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is the Booktube Newbie Tag. So, I want to introduce myself, go through these newbie tag questions so you can learn a little bit more about me and decide if I'm somebody that you like to follow. Okay. The first one, why did you start this channel? It's a good question. One that I'm still struggling with a little bit. First of all, I do have more time now. I do have two small kids, but they're a little bit older. Gives me a little more time. I finished just this past year, I finished grad school. That frees up some of my time. And this pandemic has certainly freed up some of my time. Books, though, they've always been an important part of my life, and I want to make them more important. I want to make reading and books more of a priority for me and also as an example to my children. I also wanted a way to record my thoughts after I'm done reading a book. I have done blogging before, and I still do occasionally. I have two different blogs that I still write for, but I also have other writing interests. I want to be able, when I sit down, to write fiction, to write essays. I don't want to have the obligation of maintaining a blog through writing about the books. And I thought that recording my ideas, on camera, might be a pretty good way of doing all this. And if I made it public, maybe it would create some interesting dialogue. So that's part of it. And another reason for starting this channel, you can see I'm referring to a computer screen over here, is learning some new tech. I'm at a point in my life where I kind of want to try something new, try a new skill. I don't know anything about the tech side of things here. I'm kind of a Luddite in a lot of ways, and I want to break that in a bit. I want to get a little bit better with tech and learn new issues. I'm also a teacher, and during this whole pandemic and COVID, I've certainly had to rely very heavily on remote teaching and technology, and I'm hoping this could also spill over into giving me new tools and making me a more effective teacher as well. Number two, what are some fun and unique things you can bring to Booktube? I don't know how unique of an individual I am. Of course, yeah, we're all unique, but we tend to have a whole lot in common, especially if I'm starting a Booktube channel. I'm not entirely unique. There's plenty of us out there. One of the things that I don't see, one of the reasons why I thought maybe I should start this, is that I have a lot of niche interests that when I look through Booktube, and I look, just for reviews, discussions on books that I read, I often don't find things on that. One example of this would be things like, I mentioned I'm a horror fan, horror studies, reading about horror films. I don't mean just like horror novels. I've seen that on Booktube, but, academic criticism on the horror film, looking at history through the lens of its fears and anxieties. I don't see that being discussed. So that is something that is a part of my reading cycle. It's not the only thing that I read. I do read a whole variety of things, but that's the sort of thing that at least I can maybe begin a conversation about those sorts of things, and maybe other people find it interesting enough to contribute to that. Let's see. Number three, what are you most excited for about this new channel? The obvious one is talking books. I like learning from others' readings, from their interpretations, their insight, and I'd like to be able to offer my thoughts, experience, recommendations to others. Again, the other thing, learning new tech skills, piggybacks on one of the other ones. And I just want to kind of expand my horizons, expand it through, learning a new skill set, through the books that I'm reading, being exposed to books I didn't even know were out there, and hearing perspectives from people who I wouldn't normally hear from. I do have friends that read, but they don't generally read as much as me. I don't break any charts or anything like that with how much I read. It's not extraordinary, but it does tend to be more than the people I know. And I'm also not often reading the same things as my friends. So I want to find some other people who, maybe we can cross-pollinate for topics and interests. Why do you love reading? I mean, why do you like breathing? When something is so natural, you don't even think about it. And I've always loved it. Um, I love expanding my knowledge, my perspectives, my understanding. So there is a learning aspect. Um, Books are a glimpse into another person's mind. I think that it's extraordinary that you can open up this thing and look at some black ink and hear the thoughts of somebody who might have been dead for thousands of years. That is just extraordinary to me. To go through life and not read seems horribly limiting. If you can read, you should. There's a whole wide world to explore out there, but there's also a big one in here that is infinite. And they're both worth trekking and exploring, I think. And lastly, I love the art of storytelling, of celebrating the imagination and wordcraft. I just find that, it's one of my favorite art forms. Number 5, when did you start reading? And I'm combining this with another question. It's what book or series got you into reading? So I'm combining these two. And I don't remember when I started. I have no idea. I was young. I do know that when I was around 5 or 6 years old, my parents had this briefcase that they gave me. It actually wasn't like really a true briefcase. It was basically a faux leather briefcase where when you opened it, there were actually places for cassette tapes. It was like, so you could travel with your cassette tapes. This was in the early 80s. And at one point, I had taken out the plastic inserts for the tapes, and I packed it with books, especially like little golden books. My parents got me a bunch of those, and I would go around the house pretending I was like a book salesman or something. So I mean, that was probably when I was in kindergarten. So I've always had an affinity for books. Elementary school, I started reading the scholastic books, especially the ones on hauntings, ghosts, scary stories to tell in the dark. That was a big influence on me. In 2nd grade, I remember sitting outside of my lawn and reading almost in one sitting. It might have been in one sitting, I'm not entirely sure, but Roald Dahl's The Witches. That just completely fascinated me, especially the little girl in the painting. That haunted my dreams in the best possible way. And then when I was in middle school, I kind of very quickly graduated to more adult fare. I read Stephen King's Pet Sematary, Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire. There were other books that I read at that time. The Hobbit that's when I discovered Tolkien. In school, I read John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, which I read in one night, and I just absolutely loved it. So that's the age when I really started to get an appreciation for more adult storytelling, I think. And then in high school, I discovered prose and the beauty of language. And I think that was probably through Vladimir Nabokov. I'd stumbled across Lolita and just the way his alliteration and his words and descriptions, it just opened up a whole new world to me. And obviously, never really looked back. High school is also when I discovered Edgar Allan Poe. So read a lot of that at that time as well. Next question is, what questions would you ask your favorite booktubers? I mean, there's all kinds of tech questions that I still have no idea how to do. I'm sure I'll learn that in time. I might not get any good at it, but as you can see, I'm not in any kind of fancy setup or lighting or anything like that. What I would ask them is, has the pressure of making videos, maybe a sense of obligation, has it increased or dampened a love of reading? I know when things can start to feel like a chore, they can kind of lose their charm and magic. And I'm just wondering if that's happened to any of them. Number 7, what challenges do you think starting a booktube channel will be hardest to overcome? I mean, tech issues. You can see right now I am filming at a desk with pretty crappy lighting. I do actually have a pretty nice library. It's a nice room in the house. I've got all my books there, and it'd be a perfect place to film. But it's also right off the living room, and I have 2 small children, as I mentioned before. It is almost never a quiet part of the house. Like, I go in there and I admire books, but I don't read in there. And it's also not going to be a very great place to film, especially, again, during COVID, remote learning, when my kids are home a lot. So a lot of my videos will probably be in this part of the house where I'm a little more sequestered and it's quieter. But it also means that the light might be kind of crappy. And the background, well, you know, I mean, there's some books, but the background is not going to be very studio worthy. Sometimes it will be, but not this time. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I should put it off on a day when I can just really film in the library and I'll have great lighting. And the more I thought about that, the more I realized that if I keep waiting and waiting, it's just never going to happen. So I just pull the trigger and let's do this, right? Let's just start the booktube and not worry about all the tech stuff as much. You know, I'm not expecting thousands of subscribers or anything like that. Not even a fraction of that. So just put it out there and have fun. That's the kind of attitude that I'm starting with. The last question I'll answer is, what kind of books do you read? Or what kind of books do you like to read? I read a lot of nonfiction. I almost used to exclusively read nonfiction pretty much in my 20s, throughout most of my 30s, and the last couple of years I've really made a concerted effort to read more fiction, to put it more into my cycle of reading. I still mostly lean nonfiction, but I do make a concerted effort to read fiction more. So the nonfiction I read a lot of history. I love, if we want to go chronological, I love ancient medieval history, especially with Vikings and Anglo-Saxons. I have an interest in ancient medieval warfare, like the weaponry, that sort of thing. Also paganism, pagan religion. That stuff really fascinates me, pre-Christian Europe. American history. I do read stuff from the Revolution, from the Civil War. I also like a lot of social history. I like a lot of intellectual history, looking at philosophy, ideas, how attitudes change over time, social history, sometimes history of religion too. I mean, I mentioned paganism before, but I'm interested in how religions develop and how they change, and the different, whether it be conflicts or resolutions throughout history. I am not a religious person, but I do have a fascination and wish a deeper understanding of religion and its role in our history and as a species. I read a lot of horror studies, as I mentioned. This is, on film, on culture, how culture anxieties especially shape or are reflected in the horror films that come out. That's something that I have a deep interest in. I do read some popular science and some science history, and I also do enjoy a good travelogue. I like travel writing. The fiction that I read, it's a lot of horror. Everything from gothic to modern horror. I do try to kind of keep up with the horror canon. I do read some classics. Again, a lot of gothic classics, but not just gothic. I do try to fill as many gaps as I can in especially the Western literary canon. That's probably my main focus, although I have read some other stuff from other countries. When it's summertime, I like to indulge in some Star Trek books. You can see a little thing of the Enterprise back there next to my soda. Star Trek is definitely an indulgence that I have. And going forward, I am going to try and read some more fantasy. I used to enjoy fantasy as a kid, and I want to get back into that as an adult. So that does it. I mean, that's the conclusion of my, Booktube Newbie Tag. I have no idea how natural I sound with this. I'm still not used to talking alone to a camera. I've kind of done it for videos with students, but it's very different. I didn't know if it was going to be similar at all, but it's pretty different. But anyway, I'll start creating some videos and see who likes it. All right, bye.